Racing Point's 2020 Formula 1 car is clearly destined to spend the whole year being called the Pink Mercedes. The team has made no secret of its efforts to replicate some of the fundamental design cues of last year's championship-winning W10, but to assume this car is a straight copy doesn't do justice to the amount of effort Racing Point has put in with its RP20. The similarities between the two cars, plus Racing Point's openness about copying the Mercedes, have raised several questions. So let's take a look at those and get some definitive answers, and make sure you let us know in the comments what you think of this whole situation. The nose is the most obvious part of the RP20 that follows last year's Mercedes. Racing Point isn't the only team that has switched to a narrow nose for this year, but it's followed the same shape as the Mercedes, even down to the spoon-shaped end that no other car features. The side pods are very similar to last year's W10, and this is one of the clearest indicators that Racing Point has copied last year's Mercedes and not the 2020 machine, because Mercedes has moved away from this shape with its current design. Racing Point has also moved towards a Mercedes-style front wing, which features more load at the outboard end. It has also introduced a Mercedes-style split in the fourth element at the inboard end. There are small differences even in these key areas though. Racing Point was given its front wing a more aggressive delta shape in a bid to turn more air inside the front tyres, and this is paired with a different cape under the chassis to the one Mercedes ran in 2019. Racing Point has also avoided trying to match Mercedes for complexity in the bargeboard area. However, it has added fins to the side of its chassis, which are aimed at directing some of the airflow coming off the front wing back down towards the underfloor. Many of the features at the rear of the car are already dictated by what Mercedes does, as it supplies the engine, gearbox and rear suspension to Racing Point. But in previous years, Racing Point was then trying to make that work within a Red Bull style design, having followed the high rake ride height trend for several years. This was always a compromise, as Mercedes components were designed for the works team's lower rake concept. Racing Point can now also run a floor design much more similar to Mercedes, as a low rake design requires a different arrangement of slots to create an aerodynamic seal along the side of the car. The RP20 clearly has a lot of Racing Point's own touches to it, leading some to brand it a W10B rather than a straight copy of last year's championship winning car. F1's rules are clear on the fundamental parts of a car that teams have to produce themselves. However, as long as they are carrying out their own work, there's nothing to stop a team trying to copy the look of another team's parts. The key here is that these parts cannot be made by the team that they are trying to copy, and Racing Point would not be allowed to receive design data from Mercedes from its 2019 car. Team principal Otmar Szafnauer has described Racing Point's philosophy as copying another team within the rules, saying that it did the same with Red Bull in the past. Racing Point works from pictures of another car, tries to understand it, and then sets its in-house design team to work on developing its own version. F1's newest team was founded on the idea of pairing up with a team and taking as many parts as the rules allowed. But Haas has regularly had to put up with finger pointing from rivals who believe its relationship with Ferrari is too close. Nothing has ever been proven, but Racing Point is still uncomfortable with the Haas scenario. Szafnauer said Racing Point's aero department is bigger than the entire Haas team, and Racing Point's technical director Andrew Green has not been happy with the way questions have been answered over how the transfer of information and staff between teams is policed. Another key difference between Haas and Racing Point is that Haas takes 2020 parts from Ferrari, whereas Racing Point's supply with Mercedes gets it a current spec engine, and anything else is from the previous year. Copying another team's car is not as simple as making all the bits look the same. Racing Point has to make sure it understands the Mercedes concept, and the RP20 has very little carryover from its own 2019 car. That sort of clean sheet of paper design requires a lot of resource, which Racing Point didn't have until the recent investment from its new owners. Its previous car concept, which as we mentioned earlier carried a lot of traits from Red Bull, was honed over a number of years, and Green suggested the 2020 car was a 6-month project that required tremendous effort. Racing Point has been clear from the moment the car broke cover that copying Mercedes is a gamble. That might sound strange considering it is trying to replicate the best car in F1, but as we mentioned earlier, unless a team understands the Mercedes design, it won't be able to do much with it. Racing Point finished 2019 strongly, but it felt it was running out of development potential with its own design. The team feared that sticking with what it already knew would only produce similar results to last year, and given that it was come out of the blocks this season with the target of winning the midfield battle for fourth in the championship, that wasn't going to be enough. To achieve that goal, it needs to understand a totally different car concept in a matter of months. We're heading into the final year of the current car regulations, so Racing Point has to hit the ground running with this change of direction or it won't ever see the benefit from it. But the upcoming rule changes for 2021 were another reason the team decided to take the risk in the first place, because if it does go wrong this year, the damage will only be for one season. Racing Point ran towards the sharp end straight away in testing with the new car, although headline times are only worth so much at this time of year. Perhaps more important was the early feedback from the drivers, who feel the car has got a good base to work from with a clear direction of where it can be developed. Given that last year's car appeared to be running out of development potential, that could be a significant step. There is also a belief that this change in concept could help cure Racing Point's long-running difficulties in finding a consistent balance, which has become its Achilles heel in recent times. Building its own version of a Mercedes isn't going to turn Racing Point into a championship contender overnight, but the size of the project it has carried out this winter is a good indication of how serious it is about becoming a major player in F1 in time for its rebranding as Aston Martin next year. Has Racing Point done the right thing by copying the Mercedes for 2020? And should such tactics even be allowed in F1? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe and check out plenty more F1 coverage from therace.com.